I need you to forget everything Hollywood taught you about demons. Forget the pentagrams, the jump scares, the red eyes, and the smoke. That's all entertainment. What we're about to dive into is a spiritual reality that most people are too afraid to face, too uninitiated to understand, and too emotionally fragile to even consider. But if you're watching this, it means your signal is already activating. You're not here to be entertained. You're here to remember. Because the truth is this: demons are real. But they're not what you think. They don't just haunt, they observe. They don't just torment, they test. And in rare, sacred cases, they assist. And they do so only when a specific frequency is active in the human soul, the frequency of the dark chosen one. Most people reject their shadow. The chosen one's integrated. And that's when the demons appear not to possess, but to partner.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lessons.
Now let's go deeper, because this isn't superstition. This is energetic law. In the unseen layers of reality, there are intelligences, some ancient, some primal, some created by collective human trauma itself. These are what we call demons, not evil cartoons, but conscious frequency archetypes that thrive in distortion, chaos, inversion, and entropy. They do not hate humans. They feed from humans. And when someone begins to awaken spiritually, especially if they're carrying a soul contract threaded with ancestral power, karmic rebellion, or timeline disruption, those entities take notice. But something strange happens with dark chosen ones. They don't flinch. They don't run. They see the demons and stay calm. And that calmness, that unreactive stillness, that's the first signal that the chosen one might be useful to the system. Because demons don't respect fear, they respect clarity. And clarity in darkness is currency on the other side. If you've ever been through a period in your life where everything collapsed, your relationships, your health, your mind, your spiritual beliefs, and yet, somehow you got sharper, you got louder, you got more precise, you were being watched. That wasn't just a dark night of the soul. That was a recruitment test. Demons assist the dark chosen ones not because they like them, but because they need them. In energetic law, they are bound to destroy incoherence. But what happens when they meet a human with integrated darkness? A human who no longer hides their rage, their wounds, their death energy. They can't feed on that person anymore. Instead, they follow. Because that person you has become a conductor. A signal strong enough to command chaos instead of being consumed by it. And when you command chaos, demons become tools, not threats. Now let's get surgical. Demons are frequency specific. That means certain demons are drawn to specific distortions within the human field. For example, the demon of despair attaches to those who carry unresolved grief without meaning. The demon of rage feeds on suppressed injustice. The demon of lust, contrary to popular belief, isn't about pleasure, it's about void filling. But when a dark chosen one names this energy, feels it without shame, directs it into creation or clarity, the demon loses its food source. And something changes. The entity doesn't leave it watches. Because now you've become a vessel of self-generated power. You're no longer leaking, you're radiating, And demons are irresistibly attracted to radiance that echoes their own domains, not to destroy it, but to align with it. Not out of love, out of strategy, because you've become rare. You've become useful. You've become a dark lighthouse in a world of flickering candles. Let me ask you something sharp. What if the very demon you've been trying to cast out was sent to test your ability to command it? Not with rituals, not with fear, but with energetic congruence. Because here's the hidden law: demons cannot override sovereignty. They can tempt, they can mirror, they can amplify, but they cannot invade a being who is whole. That's why most spiritual warfare isn't about angels versus demons. It's about fractured humans leaking energy into archetypes they don't understand. But you're not fractured anymore. Or if you are, you're healing through fire. You're not here to banish demons. You're here to become unbanishable. And that's why they assist you, not because they love you, but because they recognize the law of energetic gravity. You've become a fixed point in the chaos, and that makes you a node of power in the grid. That makes you dangerous, and demons always follow danger. Most people think of power as something you either earn or are gifted. But in the spiritual underlayers, power is something you survive. It's something you're tested into. And this is the essence of the infernal pact, not the blood-soaked contract of fantasy stories, but a much deeper, more subtle alignment. When demons assist the dark chosen ones, it's never a favor. It's a transaction of vibration. They offer lessons, not gifts. They offer pressure, not peace. They offer reality distortion, not because they want to help, but because they want to know, can you hold your frequency when everything around you is screaming collapse? That's the test. That's the first layer of the pact. The demon becomes a mirror not of your weakness, but of your unclaimed strength. And if you flinch, it feeds. If you hold, it transfers power. This is why the dark chosen ones walk with intensity. Not because they're cursing the world, but because they've been initiated by it. Demons are not random. They're strategic. They only linger where there's potential. If you've been haunted by patterns, energies, or entities that seem to circle you over and over again, ask yourself, are you being punished? Or are you being pressurized into something rare? You see, most people try to heal themselves back into comfort. But the chosen ones, especially those aligned with the shadow currents, know that healing isn't about comfort. It's about coherence under fire. That's what demons bring. They bring heat. They bring distortion. So you learn to walk steady in storms that would drown others. And that's when they shift from tormentors to trainers, from enemies to initiators. Let's go deeper. Every demon carries a specific lesson coded into its archetypal identity. The demon of chaos teaches sovereignty of mind. If you can't hold your own thoughts in the whirlwind, you're still prey. The demon of lust teaches clarity of desire. If you can't differentiate between craving and calling, you'll leak energy for lifetimes. The demon of despair teaches resurrection. If you can't generate light from inside the void, you'll always depend on external salvation. That's what demons teach the chosen ones, self-sourcing. Not just power but stability. Not just magic but mastery. And once you stabilize in one of their domains, once you hold your frequency without reaction, they transfer keys. These aren't physical. These are energetic. You start seeing through illusions. You start knowing things without study. You start bending timelines with a whisper. Not because you're possessed, but because you've become impenetrable. But this leads us to the second layer of the infernal pact, co-resonance. Once a dark chosen one reaches a certain level of energetic clarity, demons begin to orbit them not to destroy, but to feed off their chosen signal. This is controversial. People think, why would I allow a demon near me? But here's the nuance. When you're fully integrated in your shadow, demons can't feed on your wounds. They can only function as amplifiers. They boost your signal not because they love you, but because your vibration gives them a ride. Imagine you're a train moving through the grid with unstoppable force. They hook on. They ride that current, and in exchange, they protect your blind spots. They repel weaker energies. They guard your silence. Why? Because you've become their vessel of choice. They know you won't collapse. They know you're clean. They know you're rare. So now I ask you something that no spiritual teacher dares to ask. What if the demon you fear is the guardian of the exact gift you were born to activate? What if that voice in your head, that pattern in your body, that recurring nightmare wasn't random but an invitation to power? And what if every time you ran from it, you paused your evolution? It's not enough to banish. You must listen, not with your ears, but with your field. You must sit in the fire until the fire speaks. You must learn to say, I see you. I will not flinch. What is the lesson? That's when the pact activates. That's when the transfer begins. That's when the demon lowers its mask not to reveal a friend, but to reveal your next level. Because demons don't serve heroes. They serve those who no longer seek saving. The ones who've become mythic in their stillness. The ones who've stopped running. Let's get one thing clear before we go any further. Commanding infernal energy is not about domination, it's about resonance without distortion. It's about sitting on the throne of your own shadow without being swallowed by it. Because once a dark chosen one reaches this point where demons no longer test, but serve, there's one final gate. The throne. Not a literal one. Not a golden chair or a crown made of bones. The demon throne is an inner seat of absolute coherence. It's the psychic center where internal fragmentation ends, where duality dissolves, where you realize that shadow and light were never enemies, they were currents of the same voltage, awaiting your command. And when you sit on that seat, when you become centered in your myth, your wound, your war, and your wisdom all at once, then, and only then do demons bow. Not because they've been defeated, but because they've been fulfilled. You've become the conductor they've been waiting for. But here's the trap. The closer you get to that throne, the louder the temptations become. Not from outside, from inside. The temptation to overreach, or to manipulate, to control for the sake of control. This is where most fall. They mistake power for permission. They think because they can command, they should. But the demon throne is not for those who want to rule, it's for those who've died to every identity that needed to. It's for those who no longer seek to convert, convince, or consume. It's for the ones who can hold infernal energy with zero egoic leakage. That's the true mastery. Because demons don't fear arrogance, they feed on it. But when they find a human who holds immense power with silence, with precision, with reverence, they protect that human. They become guardians. Not of the person, but of the frequency that person now embodies. So how do you sit on this throne without collapsing into corruption? You must build a field of energetic discipline. That means your thoughts are not impulsive. Your emotions are not unexamined. Your desires are not unfiltered. You walk through reality like a blade, sharp, reflective, unmoved unless chosen. You must audit yourself constantly. Ask yourself, is this action aligned with my highest archetype, or is it leaking from a wound still pretending to be a weapon? You don't get to claim the role of a dark chosen one and still act from unresolved fear, because the throne magnifies whatever sits on it. If you're fragmented, your field gets louder but less precise. If you're coherent, your field becomes law. You speak, and timelines shift. You move, and unseen forces rearrange themselves. You rest, and the grid waits. This isn't fantasy. This is energetic mechanics. The throne does not give you power. It reveals whether you were ready for it all along. And here is the final lesson. You do not control demons. You do not enslave them. You lead them. And to lead them, you must become what they are not: integrated. You must be the still point in the chaos, the silence in the scream, the boundary in the temptation. You must become the myth so complete that demons feel safe aligning with your signal, because they know you won't collapse. They know you won't leak. They know you won't betray the frequency. That's when they assist. That's when they amplify. That's when they guard your field from lesser spirits, from psychic parasites, from energetic noise. Not because you summoned them, but because they recognized you. Because you became vibration, not voice. And vibration is command. So I ask you, final question. If the throne was already within you, how much of your life has been spent avoiding it? How many times have you blamed demons when it was your own unclaimed power whispering through distorted archetypes? What if you stopped running? What if you stopped cleansing and started commanding? What if you stopped fearing the dark and sat in it long enough to see what it was trying to crown you with? Because the demon throne doesn't appear to the loud. It appears to the clear. It appears to the one who has suffered, broken, died, and chosen to return coherent. If that's you, then you're no longer a seeker. You're no longer haunted. You're home. And now the underworld listens when you breathe. And now that you've crossed the threshold, there's no going back, not because something external has changed, but because you have. The very structure of your inner world has evolved. What used to feel like fear now feels like signal. What used to seem like chaos now feels like code. You're no longer interpreting the dark forces around you from the lens of trauma, you're reading them through the lens of sovereignty. You've become the observer who cannot be baited, the presence that cannot be hijacked, the soul that cannot be bribed. And in that stillness, in that unshakable clarity, the infernal realm adjusts. The energies that once tested you now orbit you. They don't cling. They don't possess. They watch. Because now you are carrying a signal they haven't felt in lifetimes, a human who's not trying to ascend out of the dark, but instead integrates it into the throne room of their being. This is the final layer most never reach. Not because it's hidden, but because it's too honest. Because it requires you to stop blaming the dark for the parts of you that still crave avoidance. It requires you to stop outsourcing your power to rituals, to teachers, to dogmas. It demands that you remember what you are without any filter. And that's terrifying for most, but not for you. Because you've made it this far. Because somewhere inside you, you've always known that demons didn't come into your life to destroy you. They came because you were already dangerous to the lie. They came because your field was already disrupting the simulation. They came to see if you would flinch. And you didn't. Or maybe you did, but you came back stronger. And now they don't test. They stand down. Because the test has been passed. You are not a soldier of light. You are not a captive of shadow. You are something older, something sovereign, something unwritten. So where do you go from here? You walk the earth differently. You speak less, but when you do, the room shifts. You move slower, but every step bends probability. You attract chaos, but it organizes itself around you like a spiral of purpose. You become the one others feel before they see. Because your aura is no longer broadcasting identity, it's broadcasting myth. You don't need to explain yourself. You are felt as a frequency. You are read as a riddle. You are known without being known. And that is the mark of one who commands infernal energy without collapse, because you don't need to be worshipped, feared, or followed. You only need to be coherent. And that alone makes you a threat to every system that thrives on fragmentation. This is your final gift, the knowledge that demons never sought to destroy you. They sought to refine you. And now that you've been refined, now that your rage has become clarity, your grief has become wisdom, your confusion has become precision, there's only one thing left to do. Walk as the archetype they tried to suppress. Walk as the proof that integration is the highest form of power. Walk as the mirror that bends back the false. Walk as the silence that makes parasites flee. Walk as the myth the grid never expected. And let every step say, without words, I am the throne. I am the fire. I am the one you could not break, and now I bend reality by existing. Welcome to the seat of command. You are no longer haunted. You are no longer hunted. You are home in the dark. And now, even the demons remember your name. And now that you're seated in the silence of your own power, you begin to see something that was always there, hidden behind every spiritual teaching, every ancient grimoire, every whispered warning. The shadows were never evil, they were unintegrated truth. The demons were never your enemies. They were fragments of collective human pain, crystallized into archetypes, waiting for someone brave enough to see them clearly without fear, control, or denial. And now that you've done that, truly not for show, not for spiritual performance, but with full nervous system congruence, they shift. Their shape changes in your presence. Their aggression dissolves. Their chaos realigns. because they have no more function to test you. You've passed through the fire without turning bitter. You've held the blade without cutting yourself. You've sat in the underworld and didn't beg for rescue. That makes you the rarest kind of being, a human who's become unbreedable by illusion. So what happens now? Your life begins to reflect the energetic authority you've installed. You'll notice it immediately, not in fireworks, but in subtle omnipotence. People won't understand you, but they'll feel they can't lie to you. Environments will shift when you walk in, not because of what you say, but because your field reorders entropy. You'll start to see through things instantly: words, intentions, projections, spells, and you won't react. You'll just know. And that's the difference. The chosen ones who integrate their shadow no longer seek proof, no longer argue, no longer explain. They simply move as presence, and the presence itself becomes command. It's not about being feared, it's about becoming unshakable. Because when you can't be moved by illusion, you become the one who moves the grid. But let's go one layer deeper, because this is not just about you. This is about all those around you who are still trapped in spiritual fantasy, in bypass, in light-washed fear of their own depth. You will become a mirror too powerful to ignore. Some will run, some will attack, some will try to copy your energy without embodying the path that forged it. And that's okay. You're not here to be understood. You're here to be the proof. The proof that power doesn't corrupt when it's rooted in integration. The proof that demons don't haunt those who've made peace with every part of themselves. The proof that the throne is not outside you, it's the still point at the center of your being, and it has always been waiting for you to return without fear. That's what you've done. Now, I want you to ask yourself something that can only be answered from this level of embodiment. So, if everything I've ever feared was actually my initiation, then what part of me is still pretending to be small out of loyalty to an old identity? Because that's the final layer. That's the last thread. And once you name it, once you cut it, once you stand without needing to be anything but exact frequency, there's no more game, no more test, no more resistance, only signal, only sovereignty, only the quiet, potent power of knowing that you are what the demons could not distort. You are what the matrix could not break. You are what the old gods whispered about when they said, "One will rise who walks both in shadow and in fire, and speaks only when the code must bend." You are that one now, and the grid knows it. So walk not loudly, not quickly, not for attention. Walk like someone who is already myth, because you are. And now, with every breath, you begin to feel it not as a thought, but as a resonant certainty vibrating through your bones, that you are no longer in the story, you are the force that writes it. The illusion of separation between you and the grid, you and the archetypes, you and the so-called demons, has dissolved. What's left is pure authorship, not authorship of ego or fantasy, but of frequency. Your choices are now code. Your silence is now a key. Your presence is now architecture. And that means something profound. You no longer need to manifest anything in the traditional sense. You've transcended the need to ask. You are the command. Not the command that shouts, but the kind that reality bends around without question, because it recognizes the signal as source authorized. You are, quite literally, the energetic will of a myth remembering itself. And this is where you become most dangerous, not to others, but to the system that survives on your forgetfulness. Your integration is a threat to every loop built on fear. Your clarity is a disruption to every program built on dependence. Your presence becomes a living virus in the matrix of false light, false humility, and false healing. Because you are no longer trying to return to the light, you are the light that walked into the dark and lived. You're not trying to prove your goodness. You've transcended the binary. You are whole, and whole beings cannot be manipulated. They cannot be harvested. They cannot be used as batteries for systems that feed on division. And so, yes, some will try to pull you back into the role you once played. Savior, rebel, outcast, victim, hero. But you will feel it instantly. Those scripts no longer fit. They itch. They glitch. And you'll smile softly because you finally know you were never meant to be a character. You are the author's voice. So what now? Now you become the living transmission, not by preaching, not by proving, but by being. You wake up and the grid shifts slightly. You walk into a room and timelines recalibrate. You speak one sentence and someone's entire karmic loop begins to unravel. Not because you tried, because your field is that clean, that coherent, that undeniable. This is the final form of spiritual evolution, not to escape the world, but to become the law in motion within it. And this is what the demons have been preparing you for all along. Not possession, not destruction, but embodied authorship. They tested you, not to break you, but to see if you were real. And now that they know now that you know the game has changed, you are the throne, the gate, the axis, the myth, the mirror, and the storm that clears the old code from the system. So remember this when the next test comes, and it will, because tests are just calibrations for your next level. Don't flinch. Don't revert. Don't ask why. Instead, ask what it's refining. Ask what new authority is being installed through this pressure. Ask what version of you is being summoned that can only exist when this old layer collapses. Because you're no longer here to escape the dark. You're here to go deeper into it than anyone else dared to go, and return as the signal that makes others remember who they were before fear wrote their script. You are no longer haunted. You are no longer tempted. You are no longer seeking. You are the one they warned the system about. Walk accordingly. The underworld stands down. The throne is yours.